The night my brother celebrated 10 years of marriage, I learned that a wedding ring can hide more than it promises. My sister-in-law caught me staring at her hand, at the pale indent where the gold should have sat, and instead of looking away, she slipped the ring off and winked. That wink wasn't flirtation. It was an invitation to see the broken part behind the shine. I was just the quiet brother-in-law who'd fixed the porch steps last Thanksgiving, but in that moment, I realized she was offering me a secret that could either shatter our family or set her free. My brother Daniel was the golden child, the one with the booming career and the beautiful wife, Clara. Their anniversary party was a showcase of the life everyone wanted. But when Clara slipped off her ring and winked, I saw the truth behind the fairy lights. The perfect marriage was a crumbling mask, and she had just chosen me to witness what my family refused to see. I need to take you back to the moment before the wink, before the ring came off, because what happened in that kitchen didn't start that night. It started years earlier when Daniel brought Clara home for the first time. She was a whirlwind of laughter and ambition, a public defender who argued with my father about politics and still got invited back for pie. My mother called her a perfect fit. Daniel just beamed, proud like a man who'd won a prize without knowing what the prize cost herself. They married quickly, a massive wedding with a 7-piece band and a photo booth that printed proof of joy every 10 seconds. I was the best man who gave a toast about shared genes and separate lives, the joke landing because everyone knew I was the introverted brother who stayed on the margins. I fixed things, loose hinges and wobbly tables, and I kept my questions to myself. But even then I saw the small fractures. Daniel interrupted her stories to make his own. Clara's laugh would fade a heartbeat too fast. She would twist her ring around her finger in quiet moments, a habit I assumed was nervous energy, not a distress signal. Over the next 6 years, I watched her light dim in real time. I didn't name it, didn't think it was my business. At family dinners, she deflected questions about her career, said she was taking a break, even though her eyes said the break was a permanent defeat. Daniel grinned through it all, the proud breadwinner clueless about the bakery burning down around him. The anniversary party was his grand production, a rented hall draped in gold fabric, a live violinist, a slideshow of their happiest moments that somehow featured mostly his achievements. Clara wore a stiff smile that must have required muscle relaxants. I saw her rub her ring finger so hard it left a red mark. Then during my toast, I looked straight at her and held her gaze just a second too long. I tried to ask a silent question, "Are you okay?" She lowered her eyes and kept rubbing that ring like she was sanding it away. After the applause, I slipped away from the crowd and she caught my eye again. That's when she tilted her head toward the kitchen and I followed. The kitchen was empty, the staff on break, the noise of the party muffled by the heavy door. She leaned against the stainless steel counter and sighed. Then, with a soft click, she set the ring down between us. It wasn't dramatic. It was exhausted. She looked at me with a mix of relief and terror and said, "You're the first one who's actually seen it. The broken part behind the shine." Her voice broke on the last word. I wanted to say something, anything, but she stepped closer, her perfume cutting through the scent of dishwasher steam. "I've been disappearing in that marriage," she whispered, "and nobody noticed. Not my friends, not my parents, not your brother. Only you." Her hand trembled as she pushed the ring toward me like it was a confession and a missile at once. I realized the wink had been a warning, not an invitation. The secret wasn't about flirtation. It was about survival. She was about to tell me the full truth when I heard a sound that made my blood run cold, footsteps just outside the kitchen door, and a voice I'd recognize anywhere. "Daniel." The kitchen door swung open. I moved without thinking, swiping the ring off the steel counter and into my palm before Daniel's eyes could land on it. The cold metal bit into my skin. Clara's face went pale, then smoothed into a mask of forced surprise. She stepped back, crossing her arms like she'd been waiting for the coffee maker to start. Daniel stood in the doorway, tie loosened, champagne glass in hand, his grin already turning to something harder as he scanned the tiny room. "There you are," he said, looking at Clara. "Toasting with the help instead of the guests." Clara's smile twitched. "Just grabbing a moment of quiet. The party's wonderful, honey." He didn't believe her. I could see the gears shifting behind his eyes. He glanced at me, the brother who fixed porch steps and never asked questions. "Adam, you keeping my wife company?" The word company had an edge. I shrugged, the ring pressing against my lifeline. She was telling me about a case she used to work. Something about a corrupt landlord who kept his tenants' security deposits in a mattress. I got curious. It was a lie built on a truth. Clara had once told that story at a family dinner years ago, and Daniel had cut her off. His expression flickered, then relaxed into a performance of amusement. Always the conversationalist. "Come on, both of you. The slideshow, about to loop again." He turned and walked out, expecting us to follow like obedient extras on his stage. Clara exhaled, then mouthed "thank you" before walking past me. I slipped the ring into my jacket pocket and followed, my heart hammering. The rest of the party was a fever dream of forced laughter and clinking glasses. Every time I looked at Clara, she was performing the attentive wife, her bare ring finger hidden inside a napkin or curled against her dress. Daniel played the devoted husband, but I started noticing the small cruelties. How he interrupted her toast to make his own, how he dismissed her old career as cute hobbies from a past life, how his hand on her shoulder looked less like affection and more like control. By the time the last guest left, I had a new, urgent understanding. Clara wasn't just unhappy, she was trapped. I didn't leave with the crowd. I waited in my car with the headlights off, engine cold, watching the hall's back door until I saw her slip out. She walked quickly, arms wrapped around herself, heading toward the employee parking lot, not the front valet where Daniel would be. I pulled up beside her, lowered the window, and said, "Get in." She hesitated for half a breath, then slid into the passenger seat, tears already tracing clean lines through her makeup. We drove in silence for 10 minutes until we reached an all-night diner on the edge of town. Inside, under the fluorescent hum and the smell of old coffee, Clara finally let the mask fall. She told me everything. The marriage had curdled within the first year. Daniel was never physically violent, but his weapon was erasure. He criticized her work until she quit. He isolated her from friends who didn't respect his vision of their life. He took over their finances, monitored her phone, and reminded her constantly that she was nothing without him. She showed me a series of texts from him, messages dripping with resentment and manipulation. One read, "You'd be living in a studio apartment eating ramen if I hadn't saved you. Remember that." Another, just from that morning, "You never look grateful anymore. Maybe I'll find someone who appreciates what I give." She pulled back her sleeve to reveal a faint bruise on her forearm, the shape of 4 fingers. "Last week, when I tried to tell him I wanted to see my sister," she whispered, "he didn't let me fall. He caught me." I stared at that bruise until my vision blurred. My brother, the golden child, had built a prison and called it a love story. The whole family had been complicit, me included, because we saw the shine and never looked for the broken parts. I set the ring on the table between us, the symbol of everything she had been forced to carry. "What do you need?" I asked. She looked at me with an exhaustion that had no bottom. "I need to disappear, not run away, not hide. I need him to let me go, and he never will unless I prove there's something he wants more than a wife he can control." Then she told me her plan. It involved a hidden account she'd built for 5 years, a lawyer she'd paid with cash, and a witness who could testify to the emotional and financial abuse, someone whose word would carry weight, someone Daniel would never see coming. She had chosen the quiet brother-in-law, the one who fixed things, to become the one who shattered the illusion in open court. The pivot hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a confession. It was a recruitment. I was the instrument of her freedom, and the cost was my family's loyalty forever. I reached across the table and picked up the ring. "Then we do it," I said. "But we need proof that he can't explain away. We wait, we document, and we strike when he's most exposed." Clara's eyes filled with something I hadn't seen all night: hope. We made a pact in that diner, sealed with a cold coffee toast and a promise to meet in 3 days. But as I drove her back to the hall to retrieve her car, neither of us noticed a figure in the shadows of the parking lot, holding a phone up, recording. Daniel had been waiting. The next morning, my doorbell rang at 7 a.m. I opened the door to find a manila envelope on the welcome mat, no return address. Inside was a single photograph. Clara and me at the diner table, the ring between us, her sleeve pulled up, my hand resting inches from hers. On the back in our brother's handwriting were 5 words: "You've made a terrible mistake." I stood in the doorway, the cold air biting my face, realizing the secret was already out and the fixer was about to become the target. I didn't call Clara from the house. If Daniel had someone watching the diner, my phone was no longer safe. I drove to a strip mall 15 miles away, bought a prepaid burner with cash, and dialed her number from the parking lot. She answered on the first ring, voice raw with panic. "He knows, Adam. He called me at 4 in the morning, said he'd seen everything." I told her about the photograph, the handwriting, the threat. She went silent for a full 10 seconds, then whispered, "He's going to destroy us both." I gripped the steering wheel and forced calm. "We need to meet, not at the diner, somewhere he won't look." We chose a public library in the next county, the kind with private study rooms and old ladies who don't ask questions. When I pulled into the parking lot, I saw Clara already there, wearing sunglasses too large for her face, clutching a folder against her chest. Inside the study room, she laid out the full nightmare. The hidden account she'd built for 5 years with cash from odd jobs she did in secret. Daniel had found it the previous morning and drained every penny, $43,000, into a joint account she couldn't access without his signature. He'd sent her a single text afterward: "Nice try." Her escape plan had collapsed before she could even use it. That was the moment I realized we weren't just facing a controlling husband. We were facing a man who had anticipated her every move and let her think she had a way out just so he could watch the hope die. But it got much worse. Clara opened the folder and slid a stack of printed emails across the table. They were from Daniel's work account, sent to an address she didn't recognize. The messages dated back 2 years and detailed a systematic campaign to discredit her. He had told colleagues she suffered from delusions and paranoia. He had contacted a psychiatrist, requesting an evaluation for involuntary commitment on the grounds of erratic behavior and suicidal ideation. None of it was true. The emails included fabricated anecdotes of her screaming at strangers and hiding knives. He had been building a file to institutionalize her if she ever tried to leave. Clara's hands shook as she pointed to one line in the most recent email: "If she files for divorce, I'll need the signed affidavit from Dr. Harmon within 48 hours. She won't be a problem after that." I stared at the words until the letters blurred. My brother wasn't just abusive. He was planning to have his wife committed to a psychiatric facility on false pretenses and disappear her legally. The revelation stacked on another. Clara pulled out a second set of documents, this time printouts of text messages from a woman named Alyssa. Alyssa was Daniel's assistant at the firm, and the messages made it clear they'd been involved for at least a year. But Alyssa's tone shifted over time, from flirtatious to frightened. The final message, sent just 3 weeks before the anniversary party, read: "I can't keep lying for you. If your brother testifies about what I saw at the office, I'm not going to perjure myself." So Daniel had already been worried about me before I ever followed Clara into that kitchen. He'd been watching me too, because he feared I might eventually notice something. The whole setup of the anniversary party, the grand display of the perfect marriage, was a preemptive strike to solidify his public image before any cracks could show. I had stumbled into a trap he had been laying for months. The fixer had been fixed upon. The family turned next. That afternoon, my mother called my real phone, which I foolishly answered, and she unleashed a torrent of accusations. Daniel had told her I was having an affair with Clara, that I'd been seen holding hands with her in a diner at midnight. He'd sent her the photograph. My mother wept and called me a betrayer, a homewrecker, a serpent in the garden of my own family. She said my father was so disgusted he couldn't speak. I tried to explain the truth about the abuse, but she cut me off. "Your brother would never hurt anyone," she said. "He's a good man who married a manipulative woman, and now she's corrupted you." The Golden Child had scripted the narrative perfectly, and I was cast as the villain. Clara received a similar call from her own parents, who had been told she'd taken money from the joint account to fund a secret life. The isolation was complete. 2 people, armed only with the truth, stood against a machine of lies that had already swallowed everyone they loved. That evening, I drove to Daniel's house, not to confront him, but to gather evidence while he was supposedly at a late meeting. Clara had given me a key years ago to watch the place when they traveled. I slipped in through the garage, the house dark and silent, and went straight to his office. I wasn't there to steal. I was there to photograph every document I could find: the psychiatric evaluation request, the drained account statements, the emails with the assistant. I filled a flash drive with data from his unlocked computer, which he'd left open like a monument to his own arrogance. As I copied the files, I heard the front door open, heavy footsteps. Daniel had come home early. I shoved the flash drive into my sock and ducked behind the door. He walked past the office, then stopped. I heard him pick up the house phone and dial. "Yeah, it's me," he said to someone. "The affidavit is ready. Dr. Harmon will sign it Monday. By Wednesday, Clara will be in a facility, and my brother will be in jail for trespassing and theft. I planted evidence in his apartment this morning. The police will find Clara's ring and my missing watch. It's over." My blood went cold. He had framed me for theft to discredit me before Clara could use my testimony. The plan was to eliminate us both in one stroke. I waited until he moved deeper into the house, then slipped out the back and ran to my car. I drove to Clara's temporary hiding spot, a motel on the highway, and told her everything. She didn't cry. She didn't break. She looked at me with the steel that had survived 6 years of erasure and said, "Then we go to court tomorrow before he can file the affidavit. We have his own words on that recording." I hadn't even realized I'd turned on my phone's voice memo when I hid in the office. I played it back. Daniel's voice, clear as a bell, detailing the fraud, the false affidavit, the planted evidence. We had him. That night, we prepared a sworn affidavit for Clara and a petition for an emergency protective order. At dawn, the clerk's office would open, and the truth would finally be public. But as I sat in the motel room, watching Clara sleep for the first time in years, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check your trunk." I went to the parking lot and opened the trunk of my car. Inside, wrapped in a plastic bag, were Clara's wedding ring and my brother's missing watch, exactly as he had promised the police would find them. He was already moving, and the authorities were no longer my allies. The only weapon left was the recording, and I had just hours to make it matter. We didn't sleep. At 6 a.m., Clara put on the same navy dress she'd worn to the anniversary party, a deliberate choice. She wanted the judge to see the woman Daniel had tried to erase, not a victim draped in fear. I downloaded the recording to 3 separate devices and emailed a copy to a trusted attorney Clara had been consulting in secret, a woman named Elena Marquez who specialized in coercive control cases. At 7:45, we walked into the county courthouse just as the clerk unlocked the doors. The petition for an emergency protective order was 3 pages of concise devastation: financial abuse, isolation, threats of involuntary commitment, the planted evidence, the recording as proof. We filed at 8:02. By 8:30, a judge granted a temporary hearing for that same afternoon. Daniel was served at his office at 9:15. He arrived at court with 2 attorneys and an expression of theatrical bewilderment, but I saw the crack beneath the performance. His left eye twitched. The hearing lasted 2 hours. Daniel's lawyers argued that Clara's claims were fabrications from a mentally unstable woman, that the recording was taken out of context, that the ring and watch in my trunk were proof of a conspiracy between Clara and me. Then Elena Marquez played the recording. The courtroom went silent as Daniel's voice filled the room. "The affidavit is ready. Dr. Harmon will sign it Monday. By Wednesday, Clara will be in a facility, and my brother will be in jail for trespassing and theft. I planted evidence in his apartment this morning." You cannot unhear a man describing his own crime. Daniel's face went gray. The judge, an older woman with no patience for performance, issued the protective order immediately. She also ordered a full investigation into Dr. Harmon and referred the evidence of fraud and false police reporting to the district attorney. Clara walked out of that courtroom a free woman. Daniel walked out under a cloud of impending charges that would ultimately cost him his job, his reputation, and his liberty. But the payoff was bigger than a single victory.